Hello, my friends. Today we begin with the critical situation in Ukraine's energy sector. Zelensky is declaring a state of emergency.
Denis Shmyhal has been appointed first Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Energy of Ukraine. His key task is to deal with the emergency currently facing the energy sector due to Russian strikes and severe winter weather. We have separately analyzed the situation in several of our cities, with Kyiv being in a particularly difficult position, as well as Odessa, the Dnipropetrovsk region, Dnipro, Kryvyi and several other cities and regions. Much has been done, especially in Kharkiv, where local authorities prepared in advance. Kyiv, unfortunately, has done significantly less. Very little has been done in the capital. Even these days, I do not see the necessary intensity of work. All of this must be urgently corrected. Decisions must be made. Legally, a state of emergency in the energy sector will be formally declared, which will provide more opportunities. The Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine will simplify everything related to connecting backup energy equipment to the grid. Zero bureaucracy. I instructed an increase in electricity import capacity, using all available business opportunities. In Kyiv and other cities, there must be more support centers for people, many more resilience points. I also instructed a review of curfew rules for the duration of the emergency. We may lift curfews in some cities and communities where the security situation allows it, without question. Government officials must present the relevant proposals.
At the same time, it's reported that changes are expected due to the state of emergency in the energy sector. A state of emergency will be introduced in Ukraine's energy sector. Zelensky held a meeting on energy issues. A headquarters will be established to coordinate the situation in the city of Kyiv, which will operate on a permanent basis. Work is also underway to significantly increase the volume of electricity imports into Ukraine, and there will be less public information. All educational institutions in Ukraine may switch to online learning. Zelensky instructed the Minister of Education and Science and local authorities to prepare formats for the duration of the emergency. And the government was also instructed to review curfew rules during periods of extremely cold weather. Now, let's move on to the situation along the border. Here, the Russians are trying to open new directions and expand the front line. In the Sumy area, only shelling has been recorded so far with no offensive actions. Slightly farther north, however, the Russians have claimed to have captured the village of Komarivka. At the same time, the Ukrainian side hasn't officially confirmed this information. According to preliminary data, the Russians have already managed to advance by about 1 kilometer and 400 meters. No new assaults have been recorded here so far, so we are waiting to see how events develop further. In the Kharkiv area, there is currently only shelling. In the Vovchansk area, the Russians continue to move forward gradually. After breaking through to the village of Pokrovske, they are trying to fully capture Prolipka and are pushing toward Bohrovatka. However, there have been no changes over the past day as fighting continues. The Russians are also pushing forward in the area of Dekhtyarne, where they are likewise trying to expand the territory under their control along the border. As a result, two new directions along the border have effectively opened, and the Russians have managed to entrench themselves. Whether they will continue to advance actively remains an open question. Do they have enough resources? For now, however, there have been no new changes over the past day. In the Veliki Burluk direction, the Russians are not carrying out any new assaults, and the situation has remained unchanged over the past day. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians continue attempts to regain previously lost positions. They assault in Petropavlivka and Peshane. However, after the breakthrough toward Kuralivka, there have been no new changes and no advances have been recorded over the past day. In the Borova direction, there is currently a lull. The Russians are not carrying out any new assaults, and the situation has stabilized for now. In the Lyman direction, the Russians are not easing the attacks on Lyman. They are assaulting Stavky, Drobisheva, and Novoselivka. A large number of shelling attacks also continues here, and Ukrainian forces soldiers describe the situation as follows. Sloviansk direction, Svetohirsk direction. The Russians in this sector are relying on air control and operating systematically, actively using fiber optic drones. The Russians deliberately monitor our routes, track movements, and immediately prepare strikes. A road that has been identified is effectively under constant surveillance. Movement along it it's now extremely dangerous and carries a direct risk of being hit. Dense aerial reconnaissance must also be taken into account. The Russians' eyes are constantly in the sky, so any activity is quickly detected, followed by an immediate response, FPV drones or other strike assets. They operate without delay, following a pattern spotted, struck. In this situation, the optimal tactic is to pause, wait out the peak of activity, and then move out sharply without unnecessary fuss. Don't force movement along known and exposed routes. Don't speed up and don't create predictable patterns. It's better to look for alternative routes, even if they are longer or more difficult. Right now, this is a matter of survival, not speed. In the Sloviansk direction, the Russians have pushed past Dronivka and Fedorivka, but for now they are holding and waiting. They heavily strike in the frontline areas, maintaining full drone control and waiting for the right moment to launch new breakthroughs. In the Kramatorsk direction, the Russians are assaulting Privilla, but so far they have been unable to advance further. Over the past day, the front line has remained unchanged. In the Kostantinivka direction, the Russians are assaulting Stinky, Pretechene, Pleshiyivka, and Berestok, and are pushing through in the area of Ivanopille. However, despite the fact that Russian forces are already near the village of Berestok, the Ukrainian forces are not allowing them to entrench there, and the front line remains unchanged, only the gray zone is expanding. In the Dobropilla direction, the Russians are assaulting Sofiivka, Shakhove, and Suvorove. Activity here continues, but over the past day there have been no new changes. The Ukrainian forces continue to hold the defense, although now from new positions. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians are assaulting Rodinske, fighting on the outskirts of Mirnograd continues, and they are also attempting breakthroughs on the western flank of Pokrovsk. However, they have however, they have achieved no major successes, and over the past day, the front line has remained unchanged. In the Novopavlivka direction, the Russians continue attacks within the city, but have been unable to fully capture it for quite some time. They also assault on Filia and Ivanivka, and over the past day, the front line has remained unchanged. In the direction of the settlement of Pokrovske in Dnipropetrovsk region, the Russians are not carrying out any new assaults. For now, the situation there has stabilized. In the Huliaipole direction, activity remains very high. The Russians are pushing in the area of the villages of Solotke, Dobropilla, Varvarivka, and Zelene. Fighting is ongoing on the outskirts of Huliaipole, and challenge hasn't stopped. The situation is very difficult, but over the past day there have been no new changes. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Russians are not carrying out any new assaults for now. It seems they are gathering reserves for future powerful attacks, and Ukrainian armed forces soldiers describe the situation as follows. Stepnohirsk continues to sink. The Russians remain present throughout the settlement, but they control very little. They moved in with small groups into basements, which are now difficult to dislodge. More dangerous, however, is the Russian advance toward Lukyanivsk, which forms the flank of Stepnohirsk. If both settlements are lost and the Russians fully reach the Konka River line, the situation will become very serious. In that case, the Russians would bring in both tube and rocket artillery to the Stepnohirsk-Lukyanivsk area to strike Kushugum, Balabane, and other outskirts of Zaporizhzhia. With Tornado S systems, they would be able to strike any point in the regional center. That is the situation. Thus, the Russians are gradually moving toward Zaporizhzhia, although very slowly. In the Kherson direction, the Russians have had no successes and the front line remains unchanged. It's also important to look at the situation in Iran. Trump stated that for now he has been told that the situation in Iran has stabilized. They're waiting to see what happens next.
We've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping. It's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or an execution or executions. So I've been told that on good authority. We'll find out about it.
However, Iran seems to be preparing for possible strikes and has already closed its airspace. Iran issued a NOTAM announcing the closure of its entire airspace. The restriction will last just over 2 hours and doesn't apply to certain international flights. This is an official aviation notice for pilots and airlines. Overall, we are waiting to see how events will unfold, but it seems that Trump is not in a hurry to carry out any strikes. Meanwhile, in Poland, Navrocki decided to state that Russia is a major enemy for them and always has been. According to him, Trump is the only one who can stop this war.
In Poland, we do not know any Russia other than an aggressive Russia. It doesn't matter whether it's Tsarist Russia, White Russia, Bolshevik Russia, or today's Russia under Putin. It has always been a threat to Poland, to Europe, to East Central Europe. Our history is only of Russia as a threat. Even now, in the 21st century, after the aggression against Ukraine, Russia still poses a threat to Europe. And Donald Trump today, yes, is the only leader who can solve this problem. And we must support him in this process.
However, it's not entirely clear. If Russia is an enemy for Poland, why does trade between Poland and Russia continue even during the war? European Union sanctions don't prohibit all trade, only certain goods, weapons, technology, and oil. Many Polish companies bypass restrictions through third countries: Turkey, Kazakhstan, China, which has caused scandals. Kyiv Post we square 2025. Poland is one of the European Union leaders in bypassing sanctions after Germany and the Netherlands, despite harsh rhetoric against Russia. As we can see, everyone speaks loudly, but in practice, they effectively finance Russia. Friends, be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.